I'm really excited to introduce our speaker today, Dr. Lilly Massa-McKinley, who is the Executive Director at the Kentucky Student Success Collaborative. Just a little bit of background on Dr. Massa-McKinley. She's worked in higher education for over 15 years in many areas, including crisis counseling, community engagement, access and student support and success support, career development, and strategic partnerships. While working with the 55,000 Degrees Initiative in Louisville, Kentucky, Lilly convened and facilitated a collaborative action network with university, community college, K-12, and community partners to advance and enhance systems coordination for improved student access and completion. Most recently, she has served at Bellarmine University as the Assistant Vice President for Career Development and Strategic Partnerships. Lilly has her bachelor's degree from Wake Forest University, a master's degree in Student Affairs Administration from Indiana University, and a doctorate in higher education leadership and policy from Vanderbilt University. So welcome, Lilly. We're so excited to have you join us here today.
Thank you for having me, Katie.
Awesome. So I usually like to kind of give a quick intro on the why are we here. As I said, I'm sure a lot of us have different reasons for coming to the table today, but one of the things that we were so excited about in bringing Lilly to the conversation this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you are, is that I think student success has always been top of mind for folks in higher education, and is particularly so right now as the lens of really thinking about what is a good fit for students, how do we help students succeed not only in their learning, but after they've graduated and moved on, is top of mind for so many people. And I think for a long time, individual institutions were sort of struggling to solve this problem on their own. But really what Lilly and her team have done as part of a broader national initiative is how do we take the great things that schools are doing and help them share that with their fellow institutions across, in this case, across our state. And so the idea of being able to amplify those great ideas and those valuable solutions in a much faster way, I think is something that we're really excited about. And I know is near and dear to your heart, Lilly. So with that, Lilly, do you mind just sort of introducing us to the initiative, the components of it, and just give us a little history and kind of where we've come from here?
Sure. The Kentucky Student Success Collaborative is an initiative of the Kentucky Council on Post-Secondary Education, which is our state coordinating board for all of higher education in Kentucky, the publics and the privates, the 2 years and the 4 years. We are a part of a 3-year grant-funded initiative, and we are relatively new. We just officially launched in October of 2021. But our real purpose is to help bridge the transition points between our campuses. So from our high schools to our colleges, from our 2 years to our 4 years, from our 4 years or from any college or certificate completion into the workforce. And so we're really looking at those places where maybe institutions or different partners aren't necessarily talking that much, aren't sharing that much, and try to create a space that we could scale beyond just our small 3-person team in this broad world of student success, which is literally like every single important issue under the sun in every single functional area at a university or within the industries. And so it is exciting. I was introduced to Inscribe by a colleague who had just kind of bookmarked an email that she had received before the collaborative even came into existence. And as soon as I got on board, shared it and thought this could potentially be a great tool to help just start the conversation, share out resources, allow our partners across the state to share their expertise with one another. And so as you can see on this slide, the collaborative is one initiative out of our Council on Post-Secondary Education. There are many collaborative initiatives that are taking place across our state. And so while our Student Success Collaborative has really launched the Impact Exchange, we see it as a tool for all of these different networks to share with one another. So our Faculty Advisory Network they kind of come together from different campuses to talk about the importance or the top priorities of faculty and what resources might be needed, what's new, what's working, what are challenges. And so, while we might have listservs or we might have in-person convenings or Zoom meetings, what do you do with all of that great knowledge that is generated and shared after those conversations take place? And so being able to host and facilitate that through the Impact Exchange is a real, I think, added value. Our Commonwealth Education Continuum is an initiative. It's like the P16, the P to 20, the P workforce, all of that, really helping bridge those transition points. And then the Kentucky Healthcare Workforce Collaborative is a brand new initiative, I don't even know, just recently launched, which is really industry focused and helping build up the education and training pipeline in Kentucky for healthcare workers.
That's awesome. And I think everyone can relate to that idea where like you go to an event, you're at a conference, you're at an event, all these amazing ideas percolate, and then you go home and then like your day job takes over and all the, things that you were going to do kind of, get lost in the shuffle. And so having this centerpiece where that drumbeat can continue and you can like continue that access to the ideas and the individuals is so important. Do you want to maybe go a little deeper on Kentucky Student Success Collaborative specifically? I know we have a few slides that speak to sort of the mission and the goals, and maybe we could talk to each of those.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were really, it was mentioned in my bio that I previously worked with an initiative called 55,000 Degrees, which was one of the earlier collaborative action, collective impact efforts in Kentucky. And it was really based in the Louisville metro area and working to bring together different partners and stakeholder groups to help, address this one common challenge. How can we work together to enhance college access and success for our community? And so having that background and experience, plus working in various roles within higher education, has really allowed us, I think, to build and scale the Kentucky Student Success Collaborative with maybe a different way of working than might be typical within a higher education kind of training program. And so we are really designed, and our purpose is to help build the capacity of our higher education partners, of the directors, the practitioners, the faculty, the administrators, all of those folks who are trying different things, they're innovating, they're collaborating within their own ecosystem, but they're not necessarily looking beyond that. And how can we learn from and with one another and really enhance those partnerships to accelerate our progress and accelerate our learning around student success. And our goals are really the entire state's goals, the campus's goals, to really increase those completion rates of students, eliminate equity gaps, and strengthen our workforce alignment, which ultimately, in my mind, from the student-centered lens, is to enhance that economic mobility of students that come to higher education.
And I'm curious, I know we have a little bit more down here in terms of what that comprises, but I'm curious for the audience too, as we dig into this next slide, if there are folks that are working at that intersection of like trying to bring together multiple groups, either across institutions or even within your own institution, to try to tap into best practices and make it easier for people to share that information and idea. Because I know even inside an organization, sometimes it's hard to know what everybody is doing and to share really successfully. But so you guys, the audience, can think about that and maybe let us know if any of you are working on that specifically while we dig in here.
It is certainly relevant. I mean, I see the Impact Exchange or the platform Inscribe as being helpful at kind of this collective impact level across a state, but also within a system. So I saw somebody from Ivy Tech is here. The Ivy Tech system is certainly all of the different campuses learning from and with one another on what's working in different areas of their state. That's another it's just a great platform for increasing connection among your campus partners. So, as I kind of mentioned, one thing that I think is unique about the collaborative is that we really provide some backbone support to this professional development across our state. And so we're listening to our campus partners. We've visited I don't know, 25 or so of our campuses so far in just the last 6 months. And we're asking them, what are your priorities? What are your challenges? And then listening for those common themes so that we can then bring them together to work on something. Doesn't have to be the same thing. Every campus has unique needs, but at the same time, we can do it together and hear what each other is doing, which really can accelerate our own progress. So our campus really the campus partners drive our agenda. And then from the items that they prioritize and really lift up, we can offer professional development. We try to research and promote best practices, playbooks and toolkits, articles, et cetera. We can convene and bring together communities of practice around specific topics such as student basic needs or transfer or academic supports, et cetera. And then also as a state effort, we've been able to leverage some great technical assistance initiatives or support from Gates or Lumina and others in order to connect our campuses with some experts in the field across the country. We really we measure our success based on the engagement of our campus partners in our different initiatives. Are we providing to them things that are adding value to their work and not just adding to their work? And also then, of course, what are those ultimate direct, or it's indirect for us, but what's the needle that our campus partners are trying to move? Retention, credit hour accumulation, like those kind of pieces that we also look at.
So oh, sorry, go ahead, Lily.
I was just going to say the collaborative, we are very unique in who we serve, but there are 16 other states that have a student success center, which is relatively similar to the collaborative. It's just they tend to focus more on their 2-year systems or their 2-year community colleges in their state. And those particular, those entities, those centers are really prime locations or prime groups or organizations to really be convening and bringing folks together around common topics.
Yeah, and you mentioned, so you not only look at the 2-year institutions within Kentucky, but you have a big group of 4-year institutions that are participating as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so there's a lot of diversity in that group.
It is, and it is hard to be all things to all people, but I also think that that's where the value of a platform like the Impact Exchange allows people to get in and get what they need, and to really build those individual connections that are most meaningful or most helpful for them. Just, focus in on the topics that are really relevant to maybe their position or job, or the priorities of their campus. And so really it allows us to scale and do a lot of things for a lot of stakeholders with a lot of different priorities.
Awesome. Danielle, any questions or things that you'd like us to touch on from the chat?
Let's see. So we have an attendee here that is with the Indiana Talent Network, and they're really just looking forward to hearing more about Kentucky's Student Success Collaborative and the initiative here.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people managing similar types of initiatives in complicated ways, so lots to learn. So now that we understand a little bit about the larger initiative, let's dig in more on sort of the idea for the Impact Exchange specifically and where that came from. So I know you have, you talked a lot about KPIs and the things that you track to measure your own success, and I believe this is one of them, focusing really around degree completion across the state. Is that true?
Oh, yes. Yep. A lot of states have attainment goals, and Kentucky's attainment goal is 60% of our working age population will have a post-secondary credential, certificate, or higher by 2030. We are on the path toward that. And, I think like a lot of states, we're experiencing declining enrollments, even though our completion is really strong and our equity gaps are closing. We're still really, we're focusing in on kind of that enrollment end of the pipeline at this time.
Yes, yes. But and in doing so, we talked a little bit about your member institutions. And it's clear, from the slide there you showed, as the partners come up with, here are the challenges we're facing, here are the things that we want to dig deep on. there's lots of things that you offer in that pipeline around support, including professional development and other things, and sort of in-person events. Maybe talk just, I don't know that we need to go deep on, but like the member institutions, but also, why did it feel like there was a gap there in between these in-person events or things that were going on that you wanted to fill?
Well, I think that there have been a lot of attempts to bring together transfer coordinators or, co-rec work group. But I think that it's also the how you go about convening the group that can make the biggest difference for them. And so, I mean, we've all been a part of initiatives or committees, where you might not even have an agenda. You're not exactly sure what you're working toward as a group. You might have been a part of it for 2 years already, and there's no end in sight.
Right.
And so, really the collaborative is also really about helping infuse some change leadership and change management approaches and strategies into all of the different initiatives and efforts that we are helping facilitate and support. And so when, for example, we have a community of practice right now around student basic needs. And so we have 6 different campuses that pulled together a team, and they chose their topic or their project area, and they've been working on a 90-day continuous improvement cycle. And their goal was really, they got to set their goals, but they really went through a process of focusing in on what is the problem that we're trying to solve, what do we think are the levers that will move it, and what is the work or the goals that we want to accomplish. And once they had that big picture kind of vision for their group, they were really driven to take those small incremental steps. But when you're doing it at a clip that's, pretty quick with some check-ins and some accountability, they've been able to accomplish quite a bit in their 90 days. And many of them actually accomplished their goals prior to the 90 days even completing, which is a part of our continuous learning process as well, in, identifying project scope. But it's been really great. And we're using the impact exchange to help facilitate conversation, to share update reports, to, promote any kind of news or accomplishments maybe that team members want to share. And also just to throw a ton of resources at our campus teams as they're considering food security or mental health or campus safety, whatever their topic was that they chose. We really wanted to put some additional resources, toolkits, playbooks, et cetera, inside our student basic needs community of practice within the impact exchange.
Great. Yes. And so I know, you have a lot of things that you have been doing, support, email, webinars, visiting the campuses that are part of your membership. You had this great Student Success Summit, which I think we'll talk about in a minute as well as part of the Impact Exchange. But that piece that you kind of come back to is outside of these synchronous events, when everyone's getting together, how do you continue to talk and hold each other accountable? Which is also kind of what I heard there is like, we need to have deadlines. We need to make sure that our expectations of delivery are clear among our members and realistic, and that people are able to achieve them. And so I know that's a lot of where the Impact Exchange was kind of born out of. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Inscribe, the Kentucky Success Collaborative built the Impact Exchange on the Inscribe platform. So it created a always available virtual space that any of the members could join and have access to information, resources, and each other. So they could essentially have an ongoing asynchronous conversation anytime, anywhere. And so that's what we're looking at here. And then Lilly, do you want to just talk a little bit about how the Impact Exchange is organized and maybe a little bit more about some of those great resources that you're sharing there?
Sure. So inside the Impact Exchange, we have kind of seeded some channels, which is what each of those little topic headers is really called. It's a channel based on the emerging priorities and challenges that our campuses were talking about. And so, we have 8 campuses working on a community of practice around guided pathways. We have a big initiative around transfer that's just going to get started, but we've been seeding some resources in there, over the last 6 months. I mentioned our student basic needs. Equity is a cross-cutting priority in all of our efforts. And so trying to really focus and showcase different resources for campus partners around, eliminating equity gaps and doing kind of equity audits, or really having an equity focus of their work. Mental health is something that we are still wrapping our minds around, and how we can, as a state entity, be most helpful to our campus partners. But that's where we're putting some resources and really trying to start the conversation. I mentioned, so the collaborative is one initiative of our Council on Post-Secondary Education. And so that is what I love so much about this platform, is that even though it started with the collaborative and it is really heavily focused on student success, our Council on Post-Secondary Ed does a lot more than just that. So our Affordable Learning KY is actually it's a totally another entity within the council decided to start their own channel so that their group, their kind of community of practice of practitioners, of librarians across the state, can come together and share resources, have conversation, and work collaboratively in that space. If you think about the old way of doing it, we have listservs, and I mean, I've been on some great listservs where amazing resources are being shared. And then I think about it a month later and I'm like, oh my gosh, where was that thing that they talked about? And it is rather hard to find, in the big thread of the email. And so here things are, if you have enough substance, to create a channel, then it's also how you could set it up according to your framework, whatever your theory of action is, or the things that you're trying to improve. And then we also have our commons, which is just where you can start any conversation. And that's kind of the organic nature of it. And inside the commons, we're really looking to see what's bubbling up, because we're talking to a smaller group of people on each campus, but maybe there's a huge conversation going around on online learning, or a topic that really hasn't come up in some of the other conversations. So we'll be able to monitor that and then start, providing more resources, or asking the community to provide resources to one another when new initiatives kind of pop up.
And I love how dynamic, your approach to the community has been, that there were certain things that you knew people were going to want to talk about, or you wanted them to talk about. So you put that in there, but then allowing the community to kind of evolve and develop in reaction to what you're hearing from your member institutions. I think that's really important to allow that organic nature, because then it really feels like it belongs to them and they have that ownership over it. I think we had a question, Danielle.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a question here in the chat, and I think it's a great one for you to address. How does the community integrate with the website? So I think we're going to show that here in the next couple of slides, but Katie, if you wouldn't mind just addressing the integration piece of it.
Sure. So Lily, I think you have it launching from the Student Success Collaborative site.
Yes. So on our website, and I actually don't know if there is a slide for it, but if you go to the kystudentsuccess.org, under what we do, there's Impact Exchange. And the Impact Exchange can literally be embedded inside that landing page on our website, with even a text box that says you can either click on any of these hyperlinks, to go to maybe a student basic needs focus area, or ask a question of the Impact Exchange. And so people can kind of type in a question, and when they hit the submit button, it'll go straight into the Impact Exchange. And I don't know if this might be a little too detailed, but what I really like about it is that it's smart. And so if you start typing a question on financial aid, it'll say, hey, here's 3 other posts on financial aid. Do any of these answer your question? And so it'll really help the person who's coming here for information find it as quickly as possible. And if no, these aren't actually responding to my question, then posing it, and then hopefully the community kind of jumping in and sharing their knowledge.
Yeah. The other thing I really like about how you approach the community is it's very sort of come one, come all. You have a very open model to that. And so, for the audience members, the way they've set it up is that when you first launch the community, you don't even have to be a member to access the information and browse the content that's there. So you can search things, kind of get a feel for what's going on. and then opt to join the community when you're ready. So I think that kind of open nature, we want to share information and make everyone, feel welcome, even if they aren't yet a part of the core group, it sort of sets the stage for how you guys are really approaching this problem. So I like that as well.
Yeah, anybody can access a toolkit or a playbook and download it and take what they need. But if you're going to contribute a question or respond to somebody else's post, then I think you do need to kind of sign in. And then by choosing to become, right now it looks like it's a guest account, but if you chose to become a member of the Student Basic Needs Community of Practice, then you would get an email that let you know, a notification that said, hey, someone just posted a new resource inside Student Basic Needs. And you can turn that on or off depending on your preferences. But that's kind of one of the benefits of signing in and joining different channels.
While we're on this slide, do you mind just talking for a minute? I see we had another question come in, Danielle, so we'll get to that in 1 second, but about the Student Success Summit that you hosted and how you use the community, both use that as an opportunity to introduce the community, but how you kind of wove the community into that summit as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we had like a soft launch of our Impact Exchange in January of this year, as we were still putting a lot of information in there and figuring out how to best leverage it as a tool for us. And then we hosted our annual Student Success Summit in April in Kentucky. And really, I don't think we've ever had a conference platform, some of the really fancy platforms where you can put all your sessions in a queue and those kind of things. But we were like, well, let's see what the Impact Exchange can do for us, because we really wanted to drive people here to have conversations about student success, which is exactly the point of our summit, building community, sharing best practices and resources, and building capacity or professional development. So inside that channel of our Student Success Summit, we had all of the different sessions had their own header as like a post or a resource. And then inside that resource, if somebody clicked on it, they could see the PowerPoint deck, the survey to provide evaluation feedback, the bio of the speaker, kind of a snippet of what the session was going to be about. And so they could respond to it. They could say, this was so great. Some people were asking questions. Where do I get this information? And so I think it allowed us to take our summit to a highly interactive level. And, this is now here and accessible for all time. I mean, and maybe we'll kind of fade it down once we do the 2023 summit, but it's still chock full of great resources because it was a really wonderful. Oh, and the video recordings of the plenaries and the keynotes are all inside there as well. And so even if you weren't able to attend in person the summit, you can still access a lot of the resources information, which is the point of the collaborative.
Awesome. Yes, and kind of along those lines, I think the question that came in was a little bit about moderation. So do you want to talk a little bit about your team, how you handle sort of like who's generating content, who's kind of watching over the community to make sure it's, staying happy and healthy?
Yes. So, we are still in our early phase. And so we haven't been overwhelmed at this point with a lot of pieces to this puzzle. Right now, people that join the community or join the Impact Exchange, like they sign in, they have the ability to join channels and post questions. They don't have as much of an ability to share a resource, I think, or I could be getting some of these details wrong. But yes, what our take is that everybody is the collaborative. So if you want to like ask the collaborative, like you're asking your colleague at the university down the street, you're asking anybody who is a part and a member of the collaborative to please, share their insights and resources related to the topic or the question that you might have posed. And so we have right now a pretty low threshold for who's monitoring. Like we'll let people post and we'll just we get notifications every time something is posted. And so we can immediately see and know how we can respond. And even though there's 3 of us on our team, there does become a capacity issue if it's gangbusters, and you are more concerned about making sure that it's really, strong content, professional content, all of those things. But I feel like we have, pretty good safeguards in place for that right now, and it's totally manageable.
Yeah. And I love that idea of the community, the collaborative. Everybody's sort of a moderator. Everybody's a generator of content. Everybody's there to course correct or add on or, add value. And you get so much benefit out of that, because then you don't have a couple of people trying to control the conversation or maybe navigate the conversation in a certain way. It really allows it, again, to sort of have that organic feel that you're able, just so the community will reflect the community that it's part of. So that's really great. And I know we talked a little bit about, sort of having certain topics in there, certain spaces or channels where people can go in. And you alluded to this earlier, but the resources and the content that you put in there are totally searchable. So anything you share, any questions get asked or answered. It's not like a one and done. It's almost like a living knowledge repository that you're building over time. And the best practices and the content that you're developing, I think, is so great. This is actually an example, I believe, from the event that you hosted. And, I think you got a lot of really terrific feedback at that event, and then also just on the presentations that you provided. What are some of the ongoing resources that you're hoping to, or you're currently building and sharing? What kind of shape do they take?
Well, inside our community of practice for student basic needs, we're coming up actually on our 90-day clinic or check-in. So really the end, and we're going to ask each of our campus, each of the 6 teams, to post in the Impact Exchange kind of a little summary of their work over the last 90 days. So their accomplishments, any challenges that they faced, and we'd love for them to attach their their products. What did you create, if it's something that is shareable? And in this context, these things are very shareable, because this is student basic needs. We're talking about scaling food pantries and housing security for students. And so those are common challenges across all of our campuses supporting our students, and people want to share. And so that's great. So they're going to be sharing through the Impact Exchange what they've accomplished, and what their documents might be that might help others to do the same thing down the road. And I'm very excited about that. If we did record a meeting, we had a webinar series on student basic needs earlier this spring, and we posted the recordings inside the Impact Exchange for each of those webinars, so that those are it's another piece of the resource. It's another resource that's added to this channel for people to continue to reference down the road. And it is nice.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's great because it really helps organize your information. And over time, you can see how you're building on your own work, and how the conversation is evolving as a result of, different engagements, hopefully through the collaborative, but certainly individual and independent engagements as well.
Yeah, and there was an interesting question came in, which is, so once people have joined the community, how do they know when new resources are being shared, or there's somebody that might need help? Are they, what's the process for alerting them?
So you do get to choose your own settings. So you can say how many notifications you'd like. You could get a weekly digest, a daily digest, those kind of things. I get notified every time something new is posted. And so I feel like I'm very up to date on what's going on inside the Impact Exchange. And so, but people can tone that down if that's a little much. But you don't have to worry about missing something, I would say.
Yeah. And then the earlier slide we saw, it's not going to go back up for me. Go up. Oh, well. So I know some of your posts happen in the smaller spaces, but some of the posts I know that are happening in the larger spaces, you're seeing, hundreds and hundreds of views on the content that you're providing. And what does that, how does that fit into like the larger goal of what you're trying to accomplish? Just seeing the number of people that you're reaching.
Yeah, that's really, it's, I mean, that's the great part, because when we would post a webinar, like a week later, we would have like 80 views on that, which means that they didn't just see. So I would send an email to all the registered participants that says, hey, we've got the recording of the webinar in the Impact Exchange, go check it out. And so they had to click into the Impact Exchange in order to access that recording or the PowerPoint or whatever the materials were. And it, the presenters would not just have their PowerPoint deck, they would have 5 other resources that they would want to share connected to their presentation. And so now you've got the recording, you've got the PowerPoint deck, and you've got whatever other resources they shared, and it's all right there in a nice space. And so it's been really great to see that kind of engagement. And I could tell that that was a popular way for folks to feel like they were getting some good information out of, from the collaborative, even though it was a webinar as opposed to more of like an ongoing continuous improvement project. So
yeah. And that idea too, that, you come in for one thing, but then you see another thing and another thing and another thing. And all of a sudden you've learned something you didn't even know you had a question about, or, that you were curious about. And that sort of self-discovery nature of it, I think is really important. It's going to just grow over time.
And we did have a little, when we really went big at the summit, we ended up reposting a lot of things. And so a lot of our resources that had 80 or 100 views, like when we had to repost them, the count started over. But a lot of our, that was our mistake, but still a lot of our things have a lot of views, and we saw that and we were really excited about it, even though we kind of started over on the count sometimes.
It's hard to hit the refresh button.
It is. It's really important to know how you want to organize your information, I would say.
Yeah, right. But, fortunately, you're learning quickly, much like the folks in your collaborative. Yes. Quick question from the audience. Were you jumping in to let us know, Danielle?
Go ahead, Katie.
No, you go. I haven't heard enough from you.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, Lilly, the question is really forward thinking. Are you thinking about adding additional areas of practice to your community?
Absolutely. And it's unlimited. And so that is certainly a huge benefit of this online kind of platform. So yes, we'll be able to add more channels as we go into new areas of work. We have a new community of practice that's starting up this fall around college algebra student success. And so we'll be working with the faculty instructors at 8 of our community college campuses on that community of practice. And I'm very, very excited, because I could just imagine them being able to share lessons or, their PowerPoint deck. They're all teaching college algebra, and they're going to be looking at real-time analytics from their math platform to help provide interventions to students who are flagging, who are maybe showing a behavior of distress in some way, like submitting an assignment late or abandoning an assignment halfway through, those kind of things that the analytics would pick up. So really excited about that. We'll continue to use the Impact Exchange to kind of convene and facilitate all of our future communities of practice as well.
Awesome. And I think that leads nicely. So it's kind of still early days. You launched really recently, but why don't we talk a little bit about some of the outcomes that you're tracking, how or you will know that it's working for for your goals and for your institutions.
Well, I really like to see those eyeballs, and when the little eyeball number, that tells us that a post got a lot of attention. And we didn't have 400 people at the summit. So the fact that one particular summit post that you showed had 400 and something views on it means that people were either sharing it or, the word had spread beyond our captive audience to others that weren't able to join us. So that is certainly helpful just to know that the impact exchange is getting eyeballs. I think that as we grow, adopting any new technology platform, there is like this curve. I don't exactly know what it looks like. You probably would, Katie, but you finally get to like the adoption, and then you're able to scale. And once people know about it and they're familiar with it and they're comfortable with it and they've gotten some good resources out of it, then all of a sudden it becomes the place, where people want to have these conversations and they want to share their resources. And they know they can find great resources there. And so that is what we are working toward. And we are trying to just do a much more intentional job of putting the impact exchange at the center of all of our communities of practice. Even when we first started the student basic needs group, it was like, oh, and go check out the impact exchange for some resources, as opposed to saying at each of our 30, 60, and 90-day check-ins, we're going to have our campus teams do a report out inside the impact exchange. Please share any of your documents or resources that you've created or used. And so we just need to our work needs to more intentionally focus it. And I think that we'll get a ton more, we'll hit that curve faster. And so we're just learning as we go through this process.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. There's sort of the adoption curve for any community, follows pretty closely the adoption curve that you see in traditional community spaces and for technology in general. And the initial phase of that is always this trust building process. Like, you say that this is where to go for information, but is that really where I can go? And you guys have done such a nice job just reinforcing that message and being responsive to the community members and providing strong content for them there. So, that's kind of the, in my mind, the phase that you're at is that trust is now been built. And so the larger wave of participation is likely going to be built on top of that foundation. Are you gathering feedback from the members of the collective about their experiences in the platform? Is that part of the process?
It is. I would say, it was a part of our summit evaluation. It's a part of my individual check-ins with the campuses that are in our communities of practice. And we're also doing a formative evaluation this year with kind of a third party who's going to be really surveying or interviewing our campus partners on the resources and the value add. So the impact exchange will be a component of that.
Awesome. Danielle, are you going to jump in and?
Always. Yes, I'm just going to continue to jump in. So there is a quick question here in the chat. We've talked a lot about the public facing element of the impact exchange and how it's on your website. The question in the chat is in regards to maybe having a private community or the ability for people to create a internal only community within Inscribe.
Yes. Yeah, we asked about that as well. And we really even decided or debated, I guess. So this student basic needs community of practice, do we need something special, like that's more private just for the 6 campus teams? And maybe we weren't thinking because it was private information they were sharing, or more just like it wouldn't necessarily be as relevant to everybody else. But in that particular instance, we said, oh no, let's just host everything inside the channel. And even if you're a campus that's not participating in this particular continuous improvement cycle, you might see the great work happening and want to do it the next time. But yes, we do have the ability. We've thought about, if we hosted a Change Leadership Institute, for example, is a program that, we're still kind of thinking through how valuable would this be? And, that would probably be more of a cohorted group. And so we would create a special channel just for them as campus leaders are talking about their change leadership approaches and experiences and those kind of things. So yeah, you can do both.
Yep. Yeah. So technically both are possible. We tend to, like Lilly, err on the side of suggesting more open collaboration as whenever it's possible. Because I think sometimes people underestimate how much others are interested in or want to learn from the work that's going on in other places. Certainly there are times when it really does need to be private, and that makes sense. So let's just touch really quick then on what's next. So what do you see as the sort of next phase and the evolution of the collaborative and of the impact exchange?
Well, I think what's next is a lot of doing more in the impact exchange. And I think that we do really want to, like, looking at this capacity component, it really could be a researcher would be really great, having dedicated time to be looking up the new articles or the toolkits, and there's so much great information out there. It's just hard to sift and find and then, organize it in a way that is helpful. And so I do feel like the collaborative has an important role to play in continuing to sift through and provide really great resources to Kentucky. So figuring out those responsibilities and making sure that we're dedicated to growing the resources, the knowledge in this community. But, the beautiful thing is that once people really embrace it, then that knowledge and those resources can start coming from all over the place. And it doesn't just have to depend on the 3-person team of the collaborative. I think a next step is also scaling throughout the Council on Post-Secondary Education, because we have, VP of workforce transitions, VP of, K-12 transitions, and a whole college advising academy. And there are so many collaborative initiatives inside the Council of Post-Secondary Education that I would love to see every single one of them have a dedicated channel where that they feel the ownership of that, to put in the great resources and to convene and to host the conversations and to really use it in all of these kind of best practice ways. I think it would be better for Kentucky overall if we had a common approach to collaboration, and a common kind of centralized resource of where all the great knowledge lives.
Yeah, and having everything in one place where, that as people move between collaboratives, or collaboratives sort of change their shape and nature, that you're not having to hit that refresh button and start over every time.
Yeah.
And we didn't talk a lot about it today, but just knowing that the analytics of the platform in terms of who's participating, what are they talking about, where do people's interests seem to fall, if you're siloing all of that data between collaboratives, it seems like you're going to lose something there. But if you can really look across all of that information, there's probably a lot that can be learned from that view as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Danielle, any last minute questions that you would like us to touch on?
We don't have any questions in the chat at this time, but we have about 9 minutes left. So why don't we start to roll into the next couple of slides, and then I will keep my eye on the chat and we'll address those as they come in.
Awesome. Well, as we said, if you have any additional questions, again, if you're running your own collaborative or some version thereof within or across institutions, would love to kind of know what sticky situations you're falling into. But any last minute questions, definitely let us know. While we're at it, I also just want to let you know about an additional webinar we have happening this week with Dr. Andrew Feldstein from Fort Hays State University. Dr. Feldstein is going to be talking to us about the student support ecosystem. So really thinking about how to build a collective of tools, like Inscribe and virtual community being one of them. But how do you think about building a whole collection of tools that can work together to support student success and skill building? So please join us. That'll be Wednesday at 11 a.m. Mountain Time this week. I think Danielle just dropped a link into the chat for anyone who wants to sign up. And then, of course, a huge thank you to Dr. Lilly Massa-McKinley for joining us today. I just think the work you guys are doing is so important within Kentucky, but I love the idea of that model being expanded out across the US. And we're just, honored to be able to be a small part of the work that you guys are doing. So thank you to you for joining us today.
And Katie, I will just say, Inscribe, you all have been really wonderful in helping us take your tool and your platform, which has very typically been on the campus and student facing and innovate and help, use it in a new way, but all the
Yeah.
tools and features are there. And so thank you guys also for helping us figure out how to do this and how to hopefully do it really well.
Well,
Appreciate
our
it.
pleasure. As I said, we are happy to be part of this super important work. So thanks again to you. Thanks to all of our participants for joining us today. If you want to reach out or learn anything more about Inscribe, there's my contact information, or you can, go to the website and contact us that way. We hope to hear from all of you, and we hope that we have the opportunity to continue to collaborate with everyone that participated today. So thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of